This podcast is part of the Red5 Network. For more Red5 Network podcasts, visit red5network.com.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Hello there. If you are looking for the From a Certain Point of View podcast, then these are the droids you're looking for. I'm Josh.
Did you just call me a droid?
Yeah, but I mean no offense because,
Okay.
I'm all for droid rights, just like,
Okay.
L3 and Solo. Yeah.
I'll have to come up with I'm Adam, by the way. I'll have to come up with a number designation that means Adam.
Yes. Yeah, we should come up with our own
I don't know how that
droid
would work.
designations. That would be
I have to
cool.
think about that.
Adam, for some reason I'm feeling deja vu today.
I will tell you why you're feeling that way.
I don't know why.
We recorded yesterday, and I went to edit it, went to find the file, found the file. There was only one. There should have been two. And plugged it into my editor, and whatever we recorded, there was like the first 5 seconds of it, and then the last 3 minutes of it. Everything else was gone. So the reason you're feeling deja vu is because this is the second time we're doing this in one weekend.
Now I get it. Thank you.
Also, I wanted to point out we had our first guest ever that has passed up on us now.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, my wife was gonna fill in, well, not fill in for me today, but she was gonna join me today on my end and just help to make it not as repetitive, since we already recorded this once. But then she dropped out last minute.
Said no.
Yeah, maybe we can get her again sometime. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll have to try to convince her, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we can get both our wives on for the same episode or something like that.
I have been working
that'd be cool.
on my end of that, so
yeah. All right.
We'll have to keep on plugging that.
Let's do it. So what have you been watching?
Bad choice of words. Maybe we'll have to
probably.
Maybe we'll have to maybe we'll have to keep on trying that. How's that?
Right. Yes. So, what have you been up to watching? What have you been watching and playing this week?
I've been doing some reading this week. Still trying to finish up Shadowfall. I'm getting close to finishing that up. I'll probably get it this week. But then also on Thursday evening, I got to go over and hang out with Ro from Scarif Scuttlebutt, also one of the co-founders of our network, the Red5 Network. He was actually over way far east of us, but then on his way back through, he stayed the night, we're in Pennsylvania. He stayed the night in right over the Ohio border. So I went over and we just had some drinks and sat around his hotel. Had a little patio fireplace thing. So we just had a couple drinks and chatted about Star Wars and podcasts and life and family and all that stuff. So it was a great time.
That's awesome. I think it's super cool to get to meet people that in person that you've kind of just talked to online or seen online.
Yeah, it was just random, just one of those happy little accidents that pop up, and we're able to make it work. And I thought I'd have to wait for the next con or something to meet up with everybody, but it just happened to work out, and I'm really glad it did. That was an awesome time.
Good to hear. I'm glad you got to do that.
What have you been up to, Josh?
Well, I guess, I didn't say this yesterday because I hadn't watched it yet, but this morning I watched, I started season 2 of Cobra Kai, man, I love the show. It's so good, and I highly recommend it.
I've thought about it. I just haven't started it yet.
Yeah, check it out. I mean, it feels like it's just, even though it takes place in the present day, it feels like a show that comes out of the 80s. It has a lot of 80s nostalgia and references to the other Karate Kid movies and everything. I never really got into Karate Kid, but I love the show, and
I love Karate Kid. Yeah, it's one that I haven't watched a ton, but I love Karate Kid, so I'd probably dig that.
it's making me definitely want to go back and watch Karate Kid because I never really
Yeah.
sat down and watched them.
Yeah, it's good. It's good
Yeah.
stuff.
And
Even I honestly, I didn't even mind remake with Jackie Chan and
mhm.
what's Will Smith's kid's name? Is it
Is it Jaden
Jaden?
Smith?
Yeah, yeah.
I think so.
So I even didn't mind that one even. I thought that was pretty good. So
Yeah. And I, due to your recommendation, I've also been listening to the Matrix episodes by
Ooh,
Pizza and
cool.
Parsecs,
Cool.
and amazing. I've
Yeah.
just I've always thought,
I
and
knew
I've
you'd
told you
dig
this.
those.
Oh, very much. And I've always enjoyed thinking about the Matrix on a deeper level, philosophical level, religious level. But just hearing other perspectives on it and some other ideas that I never even thought of. And then, they brought in Cam to talk about the music,
Yeah.
and he just broke down like different notes and what they mean and why they were used by Don Davis,
Yeah,
who did
yeah,
the
that was
score.
yeah, right. Yeah, that was
And
incredible.
so cool. And then Force of Light
Hmm.
was also on there. Natalie and Michelle talking about Christianity in the Matrix. So if
Yeah.
you are a Matrix fan, I highly recommend listening to it. Split into a few different parts by Pizza and Parsecs. So
Yeah, I
check
would
it
go
out.
so far as even to say if you're not a huge Matrix fan, but just want to see like a really well done like deep dive
Hmm.
into a movie and themes and elements of what make up a meaningful movie like that, then still give this a try because it's really really well done.
Yeah, it's so well done. It's probably one of the better series of podcast episodes I've listened to in quite some time. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, check it out.
yeah. Dave and Liv did a great job there. And speaking of Dave and Liv and Cam and all that, I have to mention you have to check out not you, but everyone. I know you already did.
I need to
If you haven't
finish it
watched the
though. I
debate,
need to
okay. If you
finish it.
haven't watched our debate yesterday that we did yesterday morning, Saturday morning, oh boy, I haven't laughed that hard in a long, long time, and
You will laugh out loud. I
it was
guarantee it.
I was in tears multiple times. Watched
Mhm.
it again throughout the day yesterday, and even just kind of found some favorite parts of mine and watched them over and was laughing all over again. Even I would just go through the day just thinking about it and I'd just start to laugh. It was such a fun time, and if you've been following us on Twitter, we've been passing back and forth the pineapple pizza debate, and then
Mhm.
we found a few more topics to talk about. So it's it's a good
A
time.
few more toppings, if you will.
Toppings and yeah, yeah. Uh, and there's a nice little feel good twist at the end. So no
Mhm.
spoilers, but check that out because it's
Well,
Cam and everyone
I've
just did an amazing job.
I really appreciated your attempts at moderating this thing, and I mean, and I'm sure it's completely coincidental that there are a lot of parallels between this particular debate and some debates we've had going on
It
in the real
was
world.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
not entirely coincidental. We'll say
I
that.
know.
Yeah, I mean we had some behind the scenes here, but we had some points like that we kind of wanted to hit, but a lot of
Mhm.
it most of it, I mean, I had questions written down, and like I said, there were some things that we wanted to touch on, and Cam had some ideas. But actually, like what was said was all just ad libbed, all off the cuff, and it was I
Yeah.
I had so much fun. And
Yes. Yes.
if you haven't watched it yet, you gotta watch it. It's about an hour long, but it's worth every minute of it.
Definitely check it out. And taking a look at our poll from this week, our poll question was about video games, and it was if you could create your own Star Wars video game, what would it be? And Adam and I shared our ideas last week, so we wanted to hear from you guys. And we had WSTR Media responded by saying, "Just give us Star Wars 1313." And Adam,
Yeah,
I know
you
you
know,
had
it's
mentioned that was one you
yeah,
thought about.
it is. Yeah, I replied to them with that comment. But last week we talked about Knights of the Old Republic, but then as you posted that question, I was like, 1313 came into my head, and I'm really glad they mentioned
Mhm.
that because that's a good call. I would love to see that, you know, multi-level Coruscant type of
Yeah, some
game.
Coruscant
Seeing some
underground type
underbelly
stuff.
stuff. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool to explore that. We also had Hugo's Posts podcast reply by saying Han Solo meets GTA Grand Theft Auto
Yeah,
setting
that one made me
Coruscant.
laugh out loud.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, I'm thinking like, hijacking people's speeders and ships,
Yeah, yeah.
stuff like that.
I don't know if we'd
Um,
ever like. I don't know if Disney or Lucasfilm or whoever would have to say yes to that. Would say yes to like just a fun game like that,
mhm.
because it would be. I mean, GTA. If you're familiar with GTA at all, it gets a little. Not a little. It gets very raunchy and violent and things like that. And even if it's not that level of thing, just to have a funny type thing. I know that even the Simpsons have done like a GTA style game.
Mhm.
So if we could get something like that that's just pure fun in Star Wars, I think that would actually be a blast.
Definitely. It kind of reminds me of the question of will Star Wars ever be rated R or anything like
Oh
that?
yeah,
And
right,
I
right.
kind of hope not, you know what I
No,
mean?
no, me either.
And I don't think it would ever go full GTA, but it'd be interesting
Yeah, and that's
to
why
see
even the like
something
I thought
fun.
of like the Simpsons game, and I
Mhm.
forget what it was called, but it was kind of like a GTA style. I think it was called Hit and Run actually. It was kind of a GTA type game, but not like full like mature rating, you know.
Mhm.
So
We also had Camos Mills reply with an image of Starkiller. Does
yeah,
is their first name for Starkiller, or was that his first name? I don't recall. Played by
that
Sam
was
Witwer,
right.
the Force Unleashed. So looking at a sequel for the Force Unleashed games.
Yeah, that was not his first name, but G- Galen Merrick
Oh, okay,
was his name.
okay,
So
gotcha. So
on
there's
some
that,
quick
and then we had
googling.
Anna Hayworth who said a sequel for RC.
RC is Republic Commando, and that's a pretty cool game. It was title implies Republic Commando. You were a Republic trooper, clone trooper, and it was a very cool game. I think that's a good call. I would love to see that type of game again.
So thank you to all those who responded and gave your ideas for the next Star Wars video game you'd like to see if you could make one. So Adam, what's coming up on this week's show?
Yeah, so we're coming back to Thank the Maker again. We've taken like a few weeks, maybe a month or two off from Thank the Maker, and we're coming back to it now, and we're going to be hitting up the sequel trilogy for the next 3 weeks, starting with, obviously, Force Awakens. So that's going to be today. But before that, we've got some news. Some Mando news, and then some pretty cool book and comic news after that.
Absolutely. Well, I am excited to dive into the news today. Let's hit it.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
So this week, I don't think there's actually any bad news. So, we're just going to talk about good news, Ahsoka.
She's so
So we
negative
got some
every
news.
week.
So negative. So we have some news on The Mandalorian. The Writers Guild of America website provided the list of writers for The Mandalorian Season 2, and that list includes Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni, and Rick Famuyiwa. That's my best attempt at saying that name.
In my opinion, he nailed it.
All right, excellent. And it looks like Jon Favreau is penning 6 of those 8 scripts,
Mm-hmm.
Dave Filoni writing 1, and Rick Famuyiwa writing the other. So what are your thoughts on this news, Adam?
I was honestly a little surprised that Favreau took away 6 out of 8 episodes. Not that that's a bad
Mhm.
thing. I'm not complaining at all. I trust Jon Favreau and what he writes and what he does on screen. Um, I was just surprised it was that many.
Yeah, I
He
was
didn't
actually
have that
glad to
many
see
last year,
that.
right?
I'm not
I thought there was a
sure.
little more co-writing involved last year, but I could be wrong.
You might be
But
right. I'm not sure
might be
about the
right.
writing specifically,
I
but
might be crazy.
I didn't catch the reference, Adam. I'm sorry. Was
It's a
that a
Billy Joel
reference?
song. Yeah.
Billy Joel. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, you may be
Um,
right.
Gotcha. But yeah, I'm excited. Jon Favreau's writing the majority of these. I mean, that he's invested in this show, that it looks like he's going to stick around and be present, and heavily involved. And Dave Filoni writing an episode, there's some speculation about that being maybe an Ahsoka episode, possibly, if the rumors are true. So, yeah, I'd love to see that as well.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, I think you spoke yesterday kind of about your confidence in the team that is behind the Mandalorian and their ability
I
to
did, and
continue
I am.
to deliver.
I am
Yes,
that.
yes.
Yeah, no, but seriously, yeah, no. I am, like you mentioned, I'm very confident that what season 2 is going to be something pretty awesome.
Hmm.
There's been so many rumors about characters and all this other stuff, and honestly, whichever of those, if any, come true, I think we're in for a good season 2. Which is I'm basing that off of one season, but also basing it off of the people involved and
Yeah.
Their quality of work and what they've done in the past and what they did last year. I really don't have any worries about this season. I'm very excited to just kick this thing off and get going.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, if they decided to like hand creative control of Star Wars kind of over to Filoni and
Yeah, we've talked about
Favreau,
that a little bit before, I
um,
think, but I would
and
be
at
totally on
least
board for that. Yeah,
them being kind of like the Kevin Feige of Star Wars,
right.
I'd be like, yep, I'm good with that.
Yeah,
Do it.
yeah.
So excited for season 2. We're only about, I mean,
A couple
29 or
weeks,
19
19
days
days.
away.
Yeah,
19 days
a
away
little
from
less than
that.
3 weeks. Yeah.
It'll be here before we know it, and I cannot wait. We also had some Star Wars book news. Star Wars Books Facebook page released the 40 authors, 40 stories, with the Empire Strikes Back from a Certain Point of View book
Yeah,
that's coming out
the
on
book
sale
that stole
November
our
10th.
name.
Yeah, they did. They
Yeah.
did. They took it right from us. We definitely came up with it first. Um, but yeah, so we got some excerpts here from these different stories. Anything jump out at you?
Yeah, so there's a few that jumped out at me. First, that Obi-Wan story, and obviously I'm not going to go through these like word for word, or there's 40 of these things. But the Obi-Wan story, they they kind of gave a little quote or like real quick synopsis of what you'll be, and along with the title. And Obi-Wan's quote was, watching another Skywalker make a rash decision that could affect, the course of the galaxy. And I thought that was a very interesting point for Obi-Wan to be thinking about. There's also a Yoda story again, which I'm super happy to see because I love the Yoda story and the first from a certain point of view.
Absolutely.
There's a Ray Sloan story. I'm very excited for Ray Sloan. She's been popping up here and there after.
Yeah, I was very happy to see that too.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah, I always felt like that was a character that they could explore more, in
Oh
other
yeah,
stories,
yeah,
and given her presence in the Aftermath trilogy.
yeah, absolutely. I'm glad they are doing that. Um, the, we always talk about Star Wars is good when it's weird, but then we get stories like Wampas and Tauntauns and
That's the stuff that
space
really
slugs.
jumped out at me,
Yeah,
surprisingly. I don't know
okay. That's
why,
cool.
because I'm normally not a big creature person,
Yeah,
when it comes to Star Wars, but I'm excited to see these stories from their perspective.
yeah.
Could be interesting.
There were some interesting ones in the first one,
Hmm.
but I don't know. I gravitate towards those stories about the characters. I think so.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
I
sure
also
that I'll
loved.
read some of those about the creatures, and
Oh yeah,
I'm sure
yeah.
that I'll read some of those about the creatures, and I'll know that I'll love them once I get there. But
Hmm.
just not the ones that I'm like really jumping towards. So
I think that's fair. Another one that jumped out at me was Rogue 2. Um,
oh, okay,
just given the knowledge that we have now about Rogue One, I think it strikes a different chord now when I watch Empire Strikes Back, and that particular rebel is looking for Han and Luke, and he reveals that his code name is Rogue Two. So I'm
Yeah,
wondering if they're
yeah.
going to somehow relate that to Rogue One. Maybe it pays homage to the crew of Rogue One or something like that. So I think that'd be. And it's written by Gary Whitta, who was also a writer on Rogue One. So
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to mention that Ray Sloan story that I mentioned before is written by John Jackson Miller, and I'm excited for that. See John
Mhm.
Jackson Miller write some more Star Wars. He's an excellent Star Wars author. So
Awesome.
should be lots of good stories, and I'm looking forward to it. That's November
10th, I think.
10th.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So continuing in, book news, books and comics, we have some more news on Star Wars: The High Republic. They released the opening crawl for what I'm guessing is just the event of the New Republic, or the High Republic, rather. And I'm sure this opening crawl, you mentioned yesterday when we recorded the first time that you expect to see this in the first novel,
Yeah, I
Light of the
think it'll
Jedi.
kick things off. Yeah, Light of the Jedi. I
Hmm.
think it'll kick things off, and I don't think it'll be plastered on every title. Comics have always kind of had like their little crawl at the beginning.
Hmm.
And some of the novels have too, but the comics have always had like a little crawl, and usually they're somewhat similar from issue to issue with a little few changes just to kind of remind you where we've been. So I think the comics will kind of do something like that. They'll maybe have something similar to this, or maybe this right off the bat. But
Right.
I think it'll be on Light of the Jedi, and then if the rest of them have it, I think it'll be like a little different. I think it'll be adjusted a little bit to
Sure.
fit the story, the actual story.
And when I saw this, Adam, I kind of felt like this is an opening crawl for this whole new era. Basically, it's introducing this
Oh
whole new
yeah,
era in Star Wars, um, where so many stories and different mediums can come from this time period. And I'm also excited to read the opening crawl. Now, here's the thing. My wife, Brittany, she normally reads all the opening crawls for the movies when we watch them. And had she recorded with us today, I would have given her the opportunity to read this opening crawl, but she missed out on her chance. So I am going to read an opening crawl finally.
go
You
for it.
ready for it?
Yeah,
All right. So, Star Wars: The High Republic. The galaxy is at peace, ruled by the glorious Republic and protected by the noble and wise Jedi Knights. As a symbol of all that is good, the Republic is about to launch Starlight Beacon into the far reaches of the Outer Rim. This new space station will serve as a ray of hope for all to see. But just as a magnificent renaissance spreads throughout the Republic, so does a frightening new adversary. Now the guardians of peace and justice must face a threat to themselves, the galaxy, and the Force itself.
awesome.
Thoughts? Any thoughts on this opening crawl?
That noble and wise Jedi line stuck out to me right away, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because I love that description of the Jedi, and I thought that was really cool. I think we're in for a time period where the Jedi are what they were meant to be, and kind of
Yes.
not have forgotten what they were meant to be, maybe. Um, so I'm very excited for that.
That will be really cool to see the Jedi in that light.
I
And
see what you did there.
yes. But the first
Did you
thing
mean to
that
do that?
really
Because that was pretty good.
it kind of, yeah, I mean, it kind
Okay.
of and kind of not. It just kind of
Okay.
came to me, and then I
Yeah,
was
you
like,
just gotta
yeah.
say yes when I add that.
Yes, that was intentional.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So the first thing about this opening crawl for me is that it just feels so Star Wars to me, and I think I love
Yeah.
opening crawls. I love that it's a part of this, and that it just feels like Star Wars. But this Starlight Beacon and the idea of this space station being a ray of light, as
Mhm.
opposed to like the Death Star 1 and Death Star 2 being this kind of very threatening, dark side type of thing. So it's interesting that this base station is more of a ray of hope, as it says here. So I'm
Okay.
curious to see what that means. And then just that this new adversary, and it's this Renaissance period that stood out to me too, kind of Renaissance, but also this new adversary being a threat to the Force itself. I'm really curious about that, and how there is going to be kind of a threat to the Force. I mean, will it somehow take Force abilities away or something like that, or what's that going to be? So I'm excited to
Yeah.
see what that means.
Speaking of that disaster, our next bit of news was a panel from the New York Comic Con that went into a lot more detail about what we're going to be seeing in the High Republic. And they talked a lot about the Great Disaster. We've heard a lot about it, but we started to learn a little bit more about what that's going to look like. So basically, what happens is, and I'm going to encourage you all to check out the panel from New York Comic Con, because hearing these authors talk about this in their own words means a lot more than the drivel that I'm about to spew. But but basically, what happens in this disaster is that a cargo vessel, the Legacy Run, collides with an object in hyperspace, and then basically everything that it's carrying, along with debris and everything else, are shot through the galaxy at light speed. Basically, it causes hazards for everything around it, including planets, and as that stuff is spread out through the galaxy at light speed, at really random trajectories and everything, causes a lot of issues for planets and things like that. So that's really what we're looking for here. That initial event that sends us on our adventure here leads to really citizens of the Republic crying out for help, and that's kind of what we're going to be seeing going on here. Beyond just the Great Disaster, authors including Cavan Scott, Justina Ireland, and Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Elder, and a few others chatted a lot about their characters. Even Avar Chris, they talked about some of their connections to the Force. Avar Chris has this musical connection to the Force, which I think is very interesting. Like what she senses in the Force through other, with other people. When she senses them, it comes off as like different songs, with even different instruments and things like that. So I thought that was very interesting. Some have, very strong connections to the Force and are, feeling gifted. Like Justina Ireland talked about her character. Let me see if I can pronounce this right. Vernestra Rowe, I believe. Basically like a prodigy. She's 16, but she's very strong with the Force, and then she is worried about living up to that. Other characters don't have that connection. They feel like they have to work harder to get where they're at, compared to other Jedi. So it seems like we're going to have a lot of different new characters here. Very interesting to see how they all mesh and work together. So
Yeah, it seems like there's some real depth to the characters as well.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other big piece of news we got is that next summer, the second wave of High Republic books is coming, with the second book in the series written by Cavan Scott. So that's going to be cool.
Yes.
Very excited for that. And, maybe the good thing about this being delayed from August to January is that we have less time to wait between books, at least for the first two waves. So.
Yep. It's a good point. I'm looking forward to I'm looking forward to checking out the panel, because I haven't watched it yet. So I'm looking forward to. I will definitely do that.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone out there to check it. It's only like 20, 25 minutes, somewhere in there, so it's not like too time consuming. But yeah, definitely check it out.
All right, so we are going to return to Thank the Maker, Force Awakens, and I guarantee that this oil bath is going to feel so good.
Thank the Maker. This oil bath is going to feel so good.
It did feel so good. So we are back to Thank the Maker. This is going to be the first Thank the Maker series that we have done that we're not actually thanking George Lucas, because We had the prequels, and then we had the originals. And now we're moving on to the sequels when George has sold off Lucasfilm, and now we're going to be talking to some other makers as well. And
Indeed.
some of the sources I used to get this conversation going were The Secrets of the Force Awakens, A Cinematic Journey, which was kind of the behind the scenes of Force Awakens. It was included on the Blu-ray and DVD and my digital copy. And then also checked out Audio Commentary, which was actually just JJ talking about his movie for 2.5 hours, which is pretty cool. So, the thing that the Secrets of the Force Awakens led off with was really kind of the three main returning legacy characters, the actors, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford, talking about what they felt, when this all went down. The selling of Lucasfilm to Disney, and then we find out that we're getting more movies, and then those characters are coming back, and they want to do more with those, and So Mark Hamill mentioned how surprised he was, and he actually said that part of him didn't want to do it because he felt like he had a good beginning, middle, and an end, and he didn't even really see what he could add to it at this point. Carrie Fisher, in classic Carrie Fisher style, said she was surprised. We waited this long, and she said she looked better 10 years ago. We could have done it back then. And then Harrison Ford, also in classic Harrison Ford, just saying at the end of the first 3 films, I had not thought whatsoever to revisit the character. So,
Yeah, and I'm sure
he was done.
He sounded grumpy when he said this quote, I feel.
Oh, yeah.
I guarantee he was grumpy.
Yeah, probably. And then,
but I'm so glad he came back.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he got what he wanted in some ways, too. So that's good.
Yep.
But anyway, JJ then talked about, and some of this is interesting looking back on this, where we are in time right now, going back to see where this all started, because JJ talked about, you don't realize working on a Star Wars movie just how daunting that can be. And then we know how Force Awakens was received, and then he came back to do Rise of Skywalker and how that was, received. You get some interesting almost like double meanings in watching some of this now, and that's one of them, and I'll talk about a little bit more of it later.
Right.
But then George Lucas was really the next big part of this, because the story starts there. George selling this the franchise, and I thought this quote was very interesting, and we talked with Conversations on their show, and we talked about this a little bit. But he said that when I first made Star Wars, there was a lot of people in Hollywood that said this is a movie that Disney should have made, which is a really interesting quote, because now it's Disney making these movies.
I feel like it was almost Star Wars destiny to end up with Disney. Yeah. I wonder if George Lucas had dreams where Darth Vader was kind of saying, you must sell the company to Disney. It is your destiny, type of thing. I do a horrible voice impression, but I think it was almost destiny for it to land there.
Yeah, it fits, it fits. We talked about that on Conversations, so I'm gonna make everyone go over there and listen to their show with us, and for more details about what we think about that.
Yes.
Kathleen Kennedy talked about one of the first people she thought of bringing back actually was Lawrence Kasdan, and it was nice seeing Lawrence Kasdan in there and talking about this. And I remember back then, when we found out about that was one of the things that it didn't really set my mind at ease, because I was super excited for this. I wasn't worried about it. But it kind of made me feel like, okay, this is actually real. This is like Star Wars,
Yeah.
With Kasdan, doing Empire and working with Jedi, and then now he's back in Episode 7. That was like, okay.
Yeah, I think it was important to have somebody that was linked with the original trilogy to come back and work on this one, because they really wanted it to feel like the original trilogy again.
Yeah.
in various ways. And Lawrence Kasdan is a great writer, and it
Yeah,
shows.
yeah.
And
JJ
all
gushed
of his
about
songs.
working with him and
Mhm.
how much fun he had working with Larry, as he called him.
I
But
think one of the interesting things too. Sorry to
no,
interrupt you
no,
there.
you're fine. Yeah,
Um,
I was done.
one of the interesting things about the conversations between JJ and Lawrence Kasdan was JJ wanted to explain a lot of things. I
Mhm.
remember seeing this some in one of the documentaries, but Lawrence Kasdan would tell him, like, you don't need to explain everything. You can let the audience fill in some of those gaps and details. And even though the audience maybe didn't respond to that as well, I think he's right about that. You
I
don't
do
need
too.
to
Yeah,
use so much dialogue and so much, um, trying to think of the word for
exposition.
exposition. That's it. Thank you.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe we'll have to put a pin in that idea for a
Yeah.
couple weeks from now. Um, Getting back to kind of those moments in this documentary or audio commentary where you kind of think how different times were 6 years ago.
Mhm.
JJ talking to Daisy and John, he's really like almost like triple checking with them, like, you sure you really want to do this? And this is when they already found out that they were cast. John said that JJ told him he was the new star of Star Wars, which is what kind of sunk in for him. But he's asking if they're ready for it. If they're ready for this type of thing. This is really the biggest thing, easily, that they've done in their career at this point. And just they're so excited. They're so like back then they're so ready to go, and then you fast forward 6 years or 7 years, whatever it is at this point, and it's very
Now
different
it's like they
tone
don't
for a
want to have
lot of
anything
them.
to do with
Yeah, yeah, it's
it.
very different, quotes coming out of them now. So
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
sad,
I think,
and kind of.
yeah. I mean, being in a big franchise like that can do that to you if, if it's not widely supported by the fandom, you know what I mean? It can take a toll because of fan reactions and everything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But then I have to talk about this moment. And watching this in the documentary was super cool because the script reading is just one of my favorite memories in Star Wars. Nothing that even happened on screen, but getting ready to see these movies be made, and then all of these people are sitting around this like warehouse and this like furniture that was just kind of pushed into a circle, and there's Mark and Carrie and Harrison, and then we got our new characters there. We've got Daisy and John and Oscar, and then we got Andy Serkis sitting there, and we both love Lord of the Rings, and we see Andy Serkis
Hmm.
as part of this, and it's like seeing them all in that circle and those pictures. I'll never ever forget that, and that was such a cool time to be a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, I loved the black and white
Yeah,
image
yeah,
of that and everything, and it just
yeah.
it definitely had. I agree, it had that effect on me that it did on you. It just created this excitement and this wonder of this new cast, this new story.
Hmm.
Where is it going to go? The possibilities. It's just a very exciting time to be a fan.
Yeah. And then the other cool part of this documentary is kind of seeing Mark Hamill part of that, because he was reading the script, and not like the dialogue, but he was reading like this, the in between and the setups and all that stuff. Um, he said that usually the director is the one that reads all that stuff, but JJ asked him. JJ, I guess he said something like he had to do other things or watch for other things, or that
Hmm.
But really, I think it's when you have Mark Hamill that can sit down and read something like the opening crawl to your movie for a Star Wars movie. I think you just have to do that, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I love the fact that he read the script at this script reading. It was just fantastic.
Yeah. You talked to her a little bit earlier about how wanting this to feel like Star Wars, and so one of those things, it was kind of the locations that they shot, and Abu Dhabi was probably the biggest on location thing that they did for this movie. Just like Tunisia, it was hot,
Hmm.
miserable. They all mentioned that, John Boyega in his stormtrooper suit, and talking about getting iced down and just water and all this other stuff. But then there was also a lot of running, and you think about the scenes that they filmed there, through the scavenger village and all that, where Daisy and John are just bolting through there to get away from stormtroopers and TIE fighters and all this other stuff. Daisy mentioned, the training that she didn't think that she'd be able to get through this whole thing without the training that she, experienced to get her into that shape.
Yeah, I mean, I love when with these types of films when the actors actually go through the training and they do a good portion
Yeah.
of the stunts or most of the stunts themselves. I think it makes a huge difference, you know, um, and it just adds to the believability of it.
Yeah, and then speaking of that, they talked about how almost everything in Abu Dhabi was like in camera. There was very little CG there, and if there
Mhm.
was CG, most of the time it was taking things out, not adding things in. There were some things that they did add in. There's a scene on a sunset where you see Ray's speeder going across the sunset. That speeder was painted in, but the sunset was real.
Mhm.
But then everything else was taken out. Ray's speeder again was a practical effect, but they had to take the wheels out because we don't have floating speeders. Um,
Right.
so
Not
they
yet.
no, not yet. So they took the wheels out, but then everything else was CG. That was the only CG. Everything else was practical. So you talk about that believability on screen, and I think that's it. All those characters, real costumes, even Unkar Plutt, which we probably all know at this point that was Simon Pegg from Star Trek and then a bunch of other things.
A good friend of JJ's and a
Good
big
friend of
Star Wars
JJ's.
fan.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Um, Even Unkar Plutt was real. They did mention that they had to like paint his face up digitally later because the makeup and the heat didn't mix so well. Uh, yeah, all those characters that you see there, it's all practical. They're puppets. That bird that's pecking at the at the metal, that's a
Yeah.
puppet. That's not CG. That's a puppet. All that stuff is just like you mentioned, things that just make you believe it a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, you know how much I love practical effects and location shooting and all. I just think it makes a huge difference, and um, you can tell and with the end product, you know.
Yep. And then even when they aren't location shooting, the next part that they mentioned was going back to Pinewood Studios, which if you think back to when we talked about 4, 5, and 6, the originals, that a lot of the stuff was done in Pinewood, and they go back to there, and they mentioned how a lot of the crew that worked there had family that worked on the originals, it felt like a homecoming for them. That was a really cool little fact. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
and then getting into some story stuff, Poe was supposed to die early on. We might have talked about this in the show before. I really forget. Um,
I think we
but
have, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but then Oscar had a string of movies where he died in the first few minutes. They really didn't want to do that again. JJ wanted to get him in this movie, and so kind of thought about reworking the script so that he could live. And Michelle Redwan was actually one of the ones that was like, we need to do that. Poe can come back. It might be, it might be obvious or expected, that he has that triumphant return after he disappears for a while. But she said, that's a happy thing. That's something that you cheer for. So they were, that's kind of maybe the extra push I think that JJ needed to get Poe back in that movie. And then we go on to get him into more movies, and a lot of what we know
Yeah,
about the sequels is that.
I'm actually surprised that the early version of the script or whatever had him dying early on, just because then you take away those kind of like three main characters that you had in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
right.
original trilogy. You had Han, Luke, and Leia.
Hmm.
I don't think you would have had that had Poe died unless there was some other character they were going to introduce.
And
But
he becomes such a
um,
staple in the next two movies
yeah,
too. He's so
for sure.
important, I think, in the next two movies, and for a character that wasn't even going to be there.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
Captain Phasma was actually based on some early drawings of Kylo Ren, but JJ didn't think he looked right in silver. Kind of wanted him to be black, and Didn't really want him to look like a stormtrooper either. But the thing about that drawing was, JJ kind of really took to it. He thought that that could be like a leader of the stormtroopers. Kathy Kennedy was, really taken by it as well. And when you see that early concept art of, it was Kylo Ren back then, but became Captain Phasma, it's really striking, And JJ, I've never seen the movie Phantasm. I don't know if you have or not.
I haven't,
Um,
no.
but that name Phasma actually comes from Phantasm. Kind of one of JJ's naming Easter egg things that he likes to do.
Mhm.
But yeah, it came from Phantasm. I guess there's some type of like silvery um, part of character or
Right.
object in that movie, and that's where Phasma comes from.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that such a cool looking character was kind of underutilized in my opinion, at least, I think there could
Yeah,
have been
yours and
a
mine
little,
both.
yeah, could have been a little bit more to the character for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Um, one of the things I think that The Force Awakens definitely gets flack for that I've never agreed with is how sometimes it's very similar to A New Hope, and it is. Um, I can't deny that. But then hearing JJ talk about some of the ideas behind that uh, really kind of clicked for me, even though it didn't bother me. It just kind of
Right.
like reinforced me, I guess. Uh, he really looked at Star Wars like a Western, and we've heard that before. We've heard people talk about how Star Wars being a Western or having
Mhm.
those influences. And when you think about a Western, you have these like recurring prime locations. You have things like saloons,
Mhm.
you have these towns, you have these deserts, you have that type of thing. You think about fantasy movies, you have like, you have castles, you have, princesses, you have all these other things that keep coming back. And so he felt in, Star Wars, he'd have things like cantinas or space stations. And so, then we get things like Maz's Castle or Starkiller. Uh, it really clicked for me to hear it that way, I think, even though it never really bothered me.
For sure. I mean, it's not something that's ever bothered me either. I actually I enjoy those similarities. I enjoy those callbacks and those beats repeating. I like the recurring themes in Star Wars and the rhyming that George did intentionally in a lot of ways with the prequels and the original trilogy, and then that kind of continues in the sequel trilogy. So even though it is criticized for that, I actually quite enjoy those similarities
Yeah,
myself. So
yeah.
yeah.
So Maz's Castle ends up being, the cantina scene without
Hmm.
really being a cantina. And, JJ talked about how castles just kind of, feel more exciting. It feels like there's more of a history there. There's more of a story to be told. Uh, so we get, instead of a cantina, we get Maz's Castle, which I thought was pretty cool spin on that.
Yeah, certainly, and I mean, especially the fact that this kind of mysterious kind of like I don't know, if it's like a almost a catacomb or
Oh,
basement
yeah,
type area
yeah, right. Hmm.
underneath,
Hmm.
where the Skywalker lightsaber was, it
Right?
just yes, Rey's lightsaber, um,
I'm not going to do that again.
so it's just very intriguing, and adds a little something more to the location.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Moz herself was actually based on one of JJ's high school teachers, which I thought was very interesting. And he named her who his teacher was back in
Hmm.
the that time. And when you look at they show pictures of her, and we look at her and Moz side by side. It's almost like and I forget who actually made Yoda, but it's almost kind of like those back and forth pictures of like here's Yoda, here's the guy that made Yoda, and they're like almost the same.
Or how
Um,
similar they
yeah,
actually looked.
right. And this is kind of the same way with Moz, and
Mhm.
to hear JJ kind of gush about his teacher, about she was this older lady, but very wise and very kind, and that type of thing. It made sense why Moz, I think, has a little more weight to see that that was, because it was based on that person in JJ's life. The other big thing that happens on Takodana is that Starkiller fires on Hosnian Prime, and JJ addressed that right off the bat because he said, detractors of this movie will say space doesn't work like that, with the light moving through space, that type of thing. But the thing that he said was that The Force Awakens is not a science lesson, and that quote stuck with me. And maybe because we'll have to talk about this again in greater depth next week.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily have in Star Wars the same type of physics and science as our world, and
And
I
we
don't really
shouldn't.
think,
Yeah,
and
right.
yeah, and I mean, some people get stuck on those types of details. Like,
Yeah.
I remember it was a celebration, and somebody at that celebration, it might have even been the lead up to The Force Awakens, asked JJ, are you going to address kind of some of the things in Star Wars that happen in space, like there's sounds in space when there really shouldn't be? It was something like that, and JJ was like, no. And that was
Yeah,
his
right.
response. Just no, he doesn't care about that stuff. He
I
just, it's a
remember right after the movie came out with people like I remember it was Neil deGrasse Tyson said BB-8 can't work that way because it can't roll on sand. Like I
right. It's
really
like,
honestly don't care.
so what?
Right.
It's cool.
Like if that's what you're taking to Twitter to say after this movie comes out, just
Right. You're kind of missing the
I
point.
don't care. It's just for fun.
Hmm.
Uh, but then I never thought about this, but it's true. This is the first movie where on set they used actual light up lightsabers. Kind of like we have, um,
Yeah.
instead of sticks or wood or metal or anything like that. They're using actual light up lightsabers, and you get that more real world light effects and how objects react to light. It's mentioned on Takadana, because Rey and Kylo face off, and Kylo's, kind of threatening Rey with his lightsaber, and you see how the red reflects on her skin. But then you see it again in glorious detail on Starkiller when the blue and the red in the woods, and how that reflects with
Yeah.
the trees and the snow and all that. It's just amazing.
It's very noticeable in that
Yeah,
scene with the lightsaber duel, and I love the lighting effects that you get from that on the characters' faces for sure.
yeah. We mentioned Andy Serkis earlier, but we got to talk more about Andy Serkis because I love Andy Serkis. He was actually really started as a motion capture consultant in this movie, and then JJ had mentioned that he got to watch an early copy of Planet of the Apes, where Serkis plays Caesar the ape, and how impressed he was with Andy's performance in that movie. But then he ended up coming in to play Snoke instead of just being a consultant, and which was pretty cool because the stuff that he can do, not just in motion capture, but with his voice is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
He goes from playing this like squeaky Gollum character, and then he just has this rumble that when he lets that thing go, it's frightening, just like chills and all that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure we might get into it more next week, but his performance in The Last Jedi as Snoke is actually, it's like terrifying in
Yeah,
parts. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it's just so
yeah,
good.
yeah. He is that he's that way with his voice. It's so good.
And that's my daughter.
Hi, Sydney.
We didn't get my wife on this week, but we got
We got
Sydney
Sydney.
on,
That
so
Yeah, that's cool.
you gonna say hi to everybody, Sid? Do you like Star Wars? Who's your favorite character? Always a good answer. Always a good
Baby
answer.
Yoda. That's awesome.
All right.
Um,
Well, thanks for your guest spot here in our show. I'll be down soon, okay?
that's awesome. Andy Serkis for the scene, the Hollow scene, which is one of those scenes that actually really I wasn't a huge fan of that Hollow scene.
Yeah, me neither. It threw me off the first time I saw it
It
because
really
I thought,
does. His
I didn't
size.
realize it was a hollow at first, and I thought like is
It
this
looks
creature like 20 feet tall or what's
Yeah,
going
it
on
looks
here?
very different from a regular hollow that we're used to.
Hmm.
Hollows are usually more blue, and there's a more static, and they kind of fade in and out a little bit. It doesn't look. He almost looks solid at some points, and it was
Hmm.
very striking and kind of difficult to process.
Yeah.
So still one of my least favorite scenes and how that was done. But anyway,
Right.
seeing how they completed that scene, because this is one of those scenes where the Hollow is like huge, like Palpatine in Episode 5 huge, uh, but even bigger, honestly.
Mhm.
They had Andy Serkis up on this platform, like 20-25 feet in the air, and then he's actually speaking through a microphone, so that through that room as they're recording, and then his voice is just filling that room. And you have Adam Driver and Don Gleeson down below, and they have to look up, so they have an actual frame of reference to look at. And
Mhm.
just kind of the way they did that was impressive. Um, I guess we have to talk about Han Solo's death, right?
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
I really liked how Adam Driver talked about being a part of that. He said he was excited. It was something he was excited to be working on. But then he also had this feeling he wanted to avoid this as much as possible. And I know that feeling. I'm sure you've had that feeling. You're excited for something, but then as it gets closer and closer, you're kind of like dreading it almost. Um, I'm sure you know how that feels.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think as much as this moment is just something that is terrible for the fans to experience, I think it's something that I think a lot of us probably saw it coming. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and and especially thinking of Harrison Ford's comments about wanting his character to die actually in the original trilogy, um, to give more weight to that character. I think he felt that Han Solo's character in the originals was kind of a surface level type of character, and I think he kind of wanted something more out of that character.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he definitely gets that here with The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed. This is one of those things where they, definitely kept as few people on the set as possible. This is one of those big secret type things. But then JJ talked about, he felt that this was a necessary component for this story. That
Hmm.
this isn't just the Force awakening in a young girl, but it's also the dark side awakening too.
Yeah, I love that kind of explanation of the title, The Force Awakens. I know the first time I saw it, first couple times, I never thought about the Force Awakening in Kylo Ren on the dark side. I
Right.
always thought of
Right.
it more as Rey.
Yeah. Right. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention BB-8 in this, because
Yeah, and
BB-8
you'll
is our new
probably
droid.
notice that BB-8 is now missing. Behind me, he actually Poe called, and he had a secret mission for him.
Ah,
Um,
okay,
the Resistance needed him, so that's where he is right now.
gotcha. But there was a few different versions of BB-8 that they used in this movie. There was a remote controlled version, and then there's like the one that they used the most, which was actually a puppet, which was on a rod with a human controlling it. The human was obviously later painted out. But you can kind of see with that puppet version how much of a personal touch it adds, because
Hmm.
you look close, you kind of see he doesn't just roll straight. He kind of wobbles as he rolls, and you picture like a person behind him walking, and so you get that wobble from the person walking. Um, but it just added so much more of a human element to that droid, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so impressed with BB-8. I mean, the fact that they were able to create this droid that could be moved remotely like that, blew my mind. But also, yeah, them using him in different ways to get that emotion, to get that human element out of the character. And
Hmm.
this is, BB-8's my favorite droid. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I love R2 and C3PO and so many of the other droids, but BB-8 is just my favorite. That droid really landed with me when I saw the Force
Yeah,
Awakens, and um, definitely so.
yeah, and you mentioned the remote control one, how cool that was, and
Hmm.
that technologically speaking, that's so cool because you have not just a rolling droid, and it's a big ball, but then you have the head on top of it.
Right.
And it's not just something you see on screen. It's not just a special effect. They made real ones of these. They made ones that actually
Yeah,
do that.
and I mean, when that thing came rolling through at Celebration
Hmm.
leading up back before The Force Awakens, that just I think it was that celebration.
Yeah.
Um, just blew my mind that they actually had this. It was like the droid is alive and it's there. I mean, it was crazy.
Right, right. Um, and we have to talk about the Falcon too, because the Falcon, seeing that Falcon back, that garbage back in the movie is
Hunk of
something.
junk.
Yeah, it's what This is Star Wars, and I mean that thing. It wasn't a green screen thing, that they built that Falcon. That Falcon was there, but it's also huge,
Hmm.
So when you see it on, parked in the scenes like in Takadana or Dakar or even Octo, that's actually all the same. They haven't moved the Falcon. Um, they've added maybe some trees around it. They've digitally painted this around it, but it's all parked in the same place, and they just adjusted the
That
look.
is a fun fact. I actually
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's cool. Yeah. I
uh,
mean, I love the Falcon. I mean, I think my most exciting moment at Galaxy's Edge was getting to step on that thing,
yeah.
and you're right, it's huge. I mean, seeing it in person is really cool. I can't wait for you to get to experience that,
Oh yeah, yeah.
because I know you're gonna love it.
I can't wait
So,
too. And John Boyega talked about that. Walking onto this thing, it's really there, and
hmm
he talked about running through it, and picking up the training droid and just picking up all these little pieces of the set
yeah.
that they added to this thing, and running and just messing everything up, and just acting like a kid in this thing. Then
Hmm.
then they show Harrison Ford walking back in, and for first time in decades into the cockpit. That's special stuff.
Absolutely. I love those moments, when you get to see that behind the scenes stuff and see him stepping on there again.
Yeah.
Just fantastic.
So the ending of this movie on Octo is, maybe one of the only times in Star Wars that a movie like this really ends on a cliffhanger like it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And I
And
love it.
it's a
I've told you
striking,
before,
yeah,
it's my favorite ending in a
yeah,
Star
it's
Wars movie.
amazing. It's a striking scene that was filmed in on an island in Scotland, and it was
Skellig
in.
Michael.
Yep, and that's an old, like, 6th to 7th century, I believe they said, monastery. Those steps are really
Mhm.
there, you know.
Yep.
They were only allowed like 50 some people on this island to film at a time. That's including crew and actors and everything. So they couldn't make any changes to the island. It was literally just cameras, and that's all they could really
Right.
do. So that's all there. That's all real. Just a very striking scene. Mark talked about being on that island. He mentioned only two times that he felt this feeling. One was in Tunisia, and the other was standing on top of this island, where he
Mhm.
felt like he was just on a different planet.
Right.
And Octo has that feel.
It does. I love that planet, and it's a perfect place for a Jedi Master who's
Yeah,
hiding to be, and then to train another Jedi. I mean, I love Octo.
yeah. And then we end with the lightsaber scene. Rey's handing the lightsaber, or trying to hand off the lightsaber, and Mark Hamill just talks about that scene and how he feels, how he interprets that at the end of this movie. How he thinks that Luke is just very conflicted about this whole thing. And we find out later that he's really not that conflicted. But
As it turns out.
yeah. But I guess that's something we can dive into deeper next week.
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember being so excited to see what was going to happen after that moment. And just that handoff, that exchange that could be taking place there, and what Luke's reaction would be. And of course, it wasn't what I expected. Um,
Yeah.
when I
Right.
saw the Last Jedi, just that ending moment of the Force Awakens,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
just
incredible.
yeah. I mean, I don't know if I've ever felt anything like that leaving a
Right.
movie theater.
I don't know that I've ever felt a lot of things about any movie or any series that I felt during The Force Awakens. Force Awakens is
Hmm.
easily my favorite of the sequels.
Yeah,
I love The Force Awakens. I loved how exciting that was leading up to it. I loved how invested I was after it, and I hope one day I feel that level of excitement again. Because it was
Yeah.
just. It's not normal. That wasn't normal Star Wars excitement, and I don't know if it was just
No.
penned up from 10 years of no films, but I haven't felt that for anything, and I hope I get to feel that again soon because that
I'm
was an
with you. I
incredible
mean,
time.
it made me feel like a kid again, and
Yeah,
I couldn't wait to see what was next. I think I would call The Force Awakens a nearly perfect Star Wars film. It just brought back that feeling of Star Wars again. Think about how many theories and, and how much
no, yeah,
speculation and discussions that movie created.
not many.
Um, just a couple.
Yeah, no,
So
yeah, there's one or two.
yeah, so The Force Awakens definitely
Yeah,
has definitely a very important place in my heart.
yeah, agreed. So that gets us to the end of this, and I guess that we'll be able to lead into our discussion next week with The Last
Yeah,
Jedi.
I mean, once again, we are just here to thank the makers, thank everybody that was involved with The Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams, the cast and crew, Lawrence Kasdan.
Hmm.
Thank you so much for creating such an awesome Star Wars movie, returning us to Star Wars again.
Indeed. You ready to wrap up episode 49?
Yes, I am.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in once again. Remember to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. If you're on one that lets you leave a review like iTunes or Podchaser, leave us a review. That helps us get out to more people. It helps us know what to do better or to keep doing or to change. We have actually a good bit of programming updates this week too that I want to pass along. So like you already know, obviously we started Thank the Maker again this week, which means for the next 2 weeks we'll be talking about Last Jedi and then The Rise of Skywalker. Then that leads us into Halloween, and we're going to have a little spooky Star Wars show for Halloween. Talk about some of the more creepy aspects of Star Wars, maybe. And then after that, we've been doing this show for a year now, so we're going to have an anniversary show the first week of November, which is kind of crazy. But yeah,
I'm
this
looking
is
forward
our.
to that one.
Yeah, me too. And we're going to talk about, where we've been through the first year, some of the things we talked about, how that turned out, and then what we're looking forward to in year two. We had a giveaway a couple weeks ago in episode 47. All you had to do to enter that giveaway was to comment on our YouTube video for episode 47, and you were entered to win a Mandalorian and Child t-shirt along with a set of Topps trading cards from the trailer for this second season of Mandalorian. The winner of that giveaway was our good friend, the now pineapple pizza loving Cam Ray. Congratulations on a debate well played yesterday, Cam, and congratulations on the giveaway as well. Josh, you're aware of this now because of yesterday, but I'm actually going to start a Mandalorian rewatch because, like we mentioned earlier, that's coming on October 30th. But starting on October 2nd, one episode a night, we're gonna have kind of a live chat in some form or fashion. That's gonna start on the 22nd. One episode a night will take us up to the 30th for the launch of season 2, release of season 2.
Fun.
So
That'll be
next
fun.
week, tune in for more details on that. We'll let you know where to go and where to follow and where to check it all out. So, but that will be coming starting the 22nd. Remember to check out our website from certainpointofview.com where we have blog articles. You can get contact information so you can send us questions or show topics or anything like that. There's also links to all of our socials, which happen to be Instagram, Certain POV Pod. Twitter is also Certain POV Pod. Facebook is From a Certain Point of View. Discord server links are in the show notes and on the website. Our email address is certainpovpod@gmail.com, And we are hosted by Anchor, where you can leave us a 60-second voicemail if you have any questions about the show or anything you want to add about Force Awakens or anything else we've talked about in the last 48 episodes. All fair game. Leave us a voicemail. We'd love to play it. Remember to check out red5network.com. We mentioned a few shows throughout this episode, actually. There's so many great shows on the Red 5 Network, not just focusing on Star Wars. We talked about Pizza and Parsecs, talking about Matrix. There's all kinds of different content on the Red 5 Network. So check out red5network.com for all of those shows. You can find me on the internet on Twitter at thegauze85. I'm also on Instagram at thegauze85. Josh, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at JediJarJar1722. And I just wanted to thank everyone once again for joining us this week for the From a Certain Point of View 49th episode. And we're looking forward to number 50. Next week we'll be halfway to 100, if my math's correct.
Yeah,
So
I think
thank
you
you
nailed
once.
it. Yeah.
Is that right? Did I get
Yeah,
that math?
Yeah, you
Okay.
got it.
I'm not the best at math, but that one was okay. So anyhow, just remember that today everything we said, including that math problem, was true.
From a certain point of view.